Hello, can you all hear me? All right, awesome. Good afternoon. Hope everyone's awake after lunch. And second day, we're gonna keep it fun. So we're here to talk about regional mobility and access, which naturally means we're gonna talk about regional opportunities, but also we gotta zoom out and talk about technology and bigger picture stuff going on in the United States and a lot of the things influencing both the public and private sector and what is getting done here in our region. So again, Carly Markovitz, I work for a little company called Rebel. We do a lot of mobility data and payments projects globally, and I'm based here in LA, so I've had a lot of time getting to think about our region and opportunities for transformative travel behavior. So we really want to get into that today. I want to start by giving the panelists a chance to introduce themselves and a little bit about their organization, super quick. So we'll start here with John and work our way down.
All right, thank you everybody. John Walsh, founder and CEO of Endera. Endera is a specialty bus OEM. We manufacture electric shuttle buses and special needs school buses. We're the fastest growing specialty bus company in America right now. You can see one of our buses are right at the front. Looking forward to talking to everybody today.
Hi, I'm Danny Simons. I lead up communications and public affairs for Alstom in the Americas region. Alstom is a global leader in rail mobility. We're about 88,000 people around the globe, and we're about 4,500 in the United States, including about 600 here in California. We work with some of California's largest transit systems, and we do everything from building trains of all sizes to doing operations and maintenance, including for this fine gentleman right here. And we also provide a suite of digital solutions and signaling for the rail industry.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Darren Kettle. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Metrolink. It's Southern California's regional passenger system. We operate on about 545 route miles in Southern California, serving 6 counties. It does make us the third largest regional passenger rail system in the country, serving those 6 counties, 7 lines. I'm a lifelong Southern Californian. I live in Ventura County, so if you're from Southern California, you know where that is. If you're not from Southern California, you go north towards Santa Barbara and you'll eventually get to Ventura County on your way through. So this is just to say that not only am I the Chief Executive Officer, I'm also a regular customer. To this day, I've been in this job for 4 years. I've yet to drive into the office from my home in Camarillo. I've only taken the train, unless I had someplace else to go. But otherwise, I am there and see what and experience what our customers do.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Jepson. I'm the Chief Planning Officer at the Southern California Association of Governments. We are the metropolitan planning organization that serves the 6 counties and 191 cities in Southern California. So we go all the way up to where Darren lives in Ventura and all the way down to Imperial on the border of Mexico. Our work is largely developing a long-range transportation plan for the region, where we look at making connections across the counties and cities and the transportation agencies in this region. We also have a role in coordinating that transportation system with all of the cities and their planned investments for land use and the development patterns. So we really look to have a coordinated vision for growth across this region in order to achieve a wide range of goals for the people that live here.
Awesome. I just do need to see a show of hands because we have a lot of ground physically to cover in Southern California. How many people are in LA or from LA or the region? Okay, all right. So you all know, a couple, where international or national, others? Anyone else? Okay, all right. So we have a lot of people who know our region, and that's good because we're covering a very vast swath of territory. So I want to start first with Darren and this conversation about really transformative travel behavior, right? The region is ripe for a lot of opportunities. There's also a lot of investment that's been happening. You've been hearing about it all conference, from LA Metro to other big partners who are transforming, and investing heavily in sustainable mobility. And Metrolink is no different. Would love to hear a bit more. Tell your vision about Metrolink Reimagined and kind of what you see on the horizon for your service.
Thanks, Carly. So like 29, 30 other commuter railroads across the country, we've all had these commuter transit systems that have generally were moving along. Everything was pretty much cruising. And then, of course, in Southern California, if you had done any research, you'd know that actually transit ridership was ever so slightly starting to drop for a few different reasons. But then we had what I call blunt force trauma, and that was March of 2020. And our world completely changed. And so as we came back after the pandemic, it's like, all right, given finite resources, and while we did get some support from federal and state partners, there was going to be a real question of our business model. How are we going to be able to be sustainable long term? So it led us to say, we are going to change. We're going to do something we call Metrolink Reimagined. And it's not dissimilar from what a lot of commuter railroads have done across the country. We did a fairly laborious effort to come up with, okay, what's going to be the right schedule? How are we going to get the most efficiency from our system? Really sort of change the way we do business from a 9 to 5 sort of standard commuter to, okay, that's still going to be our bread and butter, but we can't only count on that. So a little over a year ago, we launched a major schedule change, the biggest we've ever done. We put the most amount of trains we've ever put out on our system. We put it at different times of the day. We also recognized that the nature of the commute changed. You'd be surprised how many people catch an 8 o'clock train in the morning but want to get home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They used to stay till 5. And that's been a big change. So we have seen growth in this non-peak period service that is allowing us to slowly grow. I don't know that other than maybe New York area where there's just a natural affinity for using long distance rail, most of the rest of the country has not come close to recovering its ridership. We're no different, but we had to start someplace. So Metrolink Reimagined and our new schedule was a big part of that. The other second phase of that was just recently, July 1st, we launched a new fare structure to try to simplify the nature of how we charge our customers and how we sort of how we work with the fact that we have a changed environment. Our monthly pass was something that we could count on, easy money. It was based on 4 days a week commuters. We don't see 4 day a week commuters as much. So we modified our fare structure for monthly passes, benchmarked it at the equivalent of 3 days of commuting in. That has sort of been what we've seen in Southern California as being a sweet spot. And we've seen an immediate response to that. So those are just a couple of things, but if there's a message, this is where we had to start to show what we can do, because we do have major events. I know the group has talked about hearing about the World Cup, just 8 short months away, and not that we're counting, but it's something like 987 days before the Olympics. So we have to be ready for that. And so this whole first phase is like any athlete, you better start training a few years out. If you think you're just going to go walk right out and you're going to run a 4-minute mile, it's probably 3 minutes and 40 seconds now. But anyway, you're not going to do that if you don't train for it. And so we're at that place where we're trying to get ready.
Awesome. And I know Metrolink's doing a lot of big work and big changes, and I know SCAG touches a lot of those communities that Metrolink serves and is also using these deadlines of things like the games and what we're going to be looking at. So Sarah, tell us what your agency is focused on right now. What are those priorities and how are you orienting those investments right in the next couple of years?
Sure. So as mentioned, our main job is in developing that long-range plan and working to implement it. And we really see the games as this tremendous opportunity to accelerate implementation of our plan and really advance some of those concepts that have been hard to get the political will to move forward with in the past. So with this opportunity, our board adopted a framework of 4 overall objectives that they want us to be focused on as we support the implementation of the games. The first, I didn't mention, but beyond being a planning agency, we're also a funding agency. So the first thing that we have looked at is how we focus our resources to invest them in legacy infrastructure that supports the games, but also supports the long-term needs of our region. The second thing that we've been focused on is this opportunity to accelerate pilot projects, bring in all of many of you in the room, thinking about those innovations that are going to help us better connect our system. Let's look at doing those pilot projects now while there's a lot of interest in this region and hopefully some resources that are coming along with that. The third main area that we're focused on is aligning the policies and programs across all of our cities who are supporting the implementation of the game. So what that really means is we're the lead on the transportation demand management plan for both passengers as well as freight. So we are currently in the process of developing that transportation demand management plan with the cities, counties, transportation agencies, tourism associations, it's a big party. There's a lot of people that need to be part of this conversation. And we see some key outcomes of that as SCAG being the lead on a more coordinated communications campaign and sharing information on the travel options and getting people to take transit to the games. We also see ourselves having a role in a coordinated wayfinding system. Even though the venues are only in 11 cities, you're going to have to cross through a lot more in order to get to those venues. So playing a role in working with those cities to coordinate the wayfinding. And then on the freight side, there's also a suite of strategies that we'll be looking to implement, but similar with the passenger side, communications, helping the industry understand how the system is going to be impacted overall by travel during the games is going to be critical, and we see our role as a regional agency being really important in making sure that communication gets out there. The fourth and final thing that our board told us to focus on as we're supporting the Olympic Games is to really showcase our communities. Again, the venues are only in 11 cities, but this is really an opportunity to showcase many more of our communities to all the visitors that are going to be coming to this area. And we're looking to do that by giving our cities some resources to develop the community hubs or festival zones. And we're also working with a couple of our cities to pedestrianize their streets to create these great spaces for celebrating the games, even if they're not right next to the venue. They're spaces that can be closer to home that people can go to and really enjoy this time of celebration of community and culture and sport.
Love it. Looking forward to those. And hopefully we can keep them around too. I hope the games is just the starting point because these are important spaces and learning about Paris and all the other places that have done this. It's very exciting. What we would be remiss to say that the delivery of all the good work here in Southern California is done by our government partners alone. And I know Danny, can speak a lot to the role of Alstom here in the region. I would love to hear you talk about where do you see Alstom's role in supporting this transformative travel behavior, and how do you take your global perspective and bring it here to advance what we're doing in Southern California?
So it's very cool to work at a company that is doing rail projects all over the world and to be able to bring that expertise to bear. I think there are so many different exciting ways that we're doing that in California in general, and I think the BART Fleet of the Future is incredible for those of you who traveled in Northern California and remember the smell of the old BART cars, which is still burned in my memory from my younger days. To have like a new fleet and an opportunity for people to experience transit in a way that feels more modern, that feels more comfortable to them, that doesn't smell weird, is very important and very exciting. I think the work that we're doing here for LAX, and I feel like this program is fraught, and I always am like, but we just did the rail cars. But we are helping build the rail cars for the new AirTrain system at LAX, and we will be doing the operations and maintenance for that. We do operations and maintenance, and we have built a lot of the trains for most of the larger airport APM systems. When you look at the United States and you look at people's experience with transit, sadly, most Americans' experience with transit is probably riding those airport trains. That might be as far as a lot of people get in terms of taking rail transit in the United States. So we want them to have a really great experience when they first arrive at LAX. And the connection now to Metro is so important to be able to provide people an option for getting in and out of the airport in a really different way. And then working with Metrolink to be able to bring the experience that we have, both in terms of operations and maintenance, but also specifically around special events, is really exciting. And to be able to use every opportunity as a learning moment. I think the World Series and the special service during the World Series was a great opportunity to show people that you can adapt service to accommodate special events. We've had a lot of experience across multiple different systems in the past couple years where we've had the Taylor Swift experience of transit. And I think transit agencies in the beginning were like, oh, what do we do? Can we change things? And then they started to learn from each other. And they started to work with their operators more, whether they were in-house operators or private operators like us, to say like, hey, like we could do something different. Like, how do we adapt this? How do we take advantage of this moment to show people how great transit can be in a time where there is a lot of traffic, or a time when you're going to be out late, or a time when you don't want to pay $100 to park at a stadium, or when there's the Olympics and you can't park at the stadium? How do you provide a really great experience for people? And some of that is thinking about advanced maintenance and preventative maintenance. Some of that is staging people in the right places to make sure that you have really reliable service. How is that that if you have trains that have an issue, they can be fixed very quickly. Having operators in the right places so you can run more frequent service or service into later hours or different hours of the day. How is it that you have more customer ambassadors on the trains and at the platforms to explain to people who maybe don't take transit on a regular basis how to use the system and welcome them in, especially when they're traveling maybe with their kids or they're traveling with older relatives, and make it a really delightful experience for them and hopefully sustain that. And so we're hoping to bring some of that experience combined with the great ideas that already exist from Darren and his team and from people in this region to hopefully give people a delightful experience, whether they're from this region and using transit for the first time or whether they're visiting from out of town and are going to be delightfully surprised to find out how transit friendly the greater LA area is.
I love it. And John, from the bus side, right? We talked about the backbone, we talked about rail. Where are you positioning Indera as a key partner in delivering? Like, how do you see your role in helping transform travel behavior in a region like SoCal?
Yeah, it's a tough problem to solve, especially with a lot of the clean city mandates. And the last 5 years have been really rough for OEMs. There was this SPAC boom in 2021 that birthed a bunch of these EV companies that were not ready to go public, and then they raised a bunch of money. They set unrealistic expectations in their financials, and then their stock crashed, and then they couldn't raise money, and then they went under. And then at the same time, in the previous administration, you had a political alignment with California and the federal government, and you had all these mandates to go electric. But because the capital markets weren't there to bridge that gap when interest rates went through the roof, when inflation went through the roof, and then these equipment providers couldn't get the capital that they needed, to where now you're stuck with these mandates and very limited reliable equipment providers. And with the Olympics, there's this big push to go electric. What we've taken, the approach we've taken as a company is we have a legacy business. We bought Winnebago's bus division and scaled that in Ohio. And we've leveraged that legacy business to solve a sustainable business model on the EV side. You get labor and overhead efficiencies and economies of scale that can help us drive the price of EVs down. But at the same time, by being a healthy, stable company, you can give confidence to transit agencies and school districts that we're going to stand by our product and that we're going to have a reliable product for them to operate. We're delivering 5 buses to LA County right now. We're delivering some to Pasadena, all electric. So there is a solution. It just is going to take a partnership between the public and private sector. There's many barriers to entry at the regulatory level that do make it difficult for equipment providers at times and even end customers. But future's definitely electric when it comes to buses. It's fundamentally a better technology, especially when you have fixed routes and you have industrial depots with 483 phase power, that infrastructure isn't as much of a challenge, and they're going 50 to 150 miles a day. But you have to have a reliable company to do that. And so that's what we sought to solve is to be a trusted brand so that we can actually deliver these products, stand by them, because there have been a lot of horror stories, a lot of failed deployments, a lot of companies that went under after they bought the buses, no one to service them. And so there's been a bad experience, a bad taste in people's mouth, but fundamentally it's a better solution. You just have to solve a lot of these other problems. So
you're talking a lot about diversification and the traditional ICE vehicles you all offer in addition to electric. I would love to put it back to you, John, also, I think, and soon down the line about Transit Tech. We're here for Transit Tech. What other products or services are you offering that do, help create this larger ecosystem, like connections to other services, or how do you see that view from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a transition, right? You can't go immediately overnight to 100% electric. I've been a big advocate that everything should just be hybrid immediately and we should start working to all electric. But things that we've tried to do to enhance the customer experience when we deploy our vehicles is we have a smart bus. So it's connected. We can data share with transit agencies, with rail systems to try to enhance the customer experience. when you look at the legacy bus sector, it's in the basement from a technology level. There's very limited data. It's a really old school industry. So by leveraging that data, being able to share with public rail, with larger transit systems, you can enhance that customer experience. So we have software platforms, for example, that we provide our customers that can see when the bus arrives, you can see the seat availability, and we can try to optimize the routes so that you have less buses needed to perform your headway loss. But we do the connector bus, right? So we work within the larger 70 passenger buses that increasingly have capacity utilization issues. And so we seek to connect those together.
Danny, tell us about Alstom's investments in transit tech. Where are those on your horizon or imminent or active? And how is it helping you think about the way you deliver great customer service?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about innovation in the rail space, I think there are some like more futuristic, high-tech things. And then there's also iterations on technology that already exists that's just getting better and better, that actually probably is more transformative. So first, and this has been talked about a lot in the past few days, is electrification. And sort of to John's point, we do have a full suite of options for our customers, recognizing that I think it's like 1% of the North American rail market is electrified. So we have hybrid options, we have these interim solutions, but we're also seeing more interest from our customers in full electrification. We are working actively on a project with not Metrolink, but Metrolinx in Toronto, and forgive me when I get the two mixed up. For some reason, the K and the X, it's just a lot in my brain. But they have a very ambitious plan to electrify and expand their system to transform from a commuter rail to a regional rail system. And for them, electrification is the key to unlocking that, because electrification combined with communications-based train control allows you to run service that is faster and more frequent both, which allows you to have more headway, less time between headways, more service, and to have shorter travel times for people, which is, very important if you want to grow your ridership. And it's very important to the Greater Toronto Area as they have continued to grow and face massive traffic congestion issues. The communications-based train control is a place where that is something that is standard now in Europe. It's called something different in Europe, but it's basically the same thing. And you're already seeing kind of the next generation of that now. So it's not just train to wayside, it is train to train communication, which allows you to run even closer headways for places that have the ridership demand, and to be able to do that safely. So I think that's really exciting. The second dimension I see, and I think there's more interest in this, and I hear it from customers in the US, but I also hear it in Europe a lot, is around automation. We have a problem, you see it on the bus side and you see it on the rail side both, of an aging workforce of operators, both for bus and rail. And how are you going to replace people? And does it make sense to replace them one-to-one? There's more demand these days on trains for people to be interacting in the train car and providing more eyes inside the train so that people feel that kind of sense of public safety versus necessarily knowing that there's a human being inside a cab somewhere that you can't really get to if there's an emergency who's driving the train. The computers can drive the trains now. We have one of the largest automated metro systems in the world in Montreal called the REM. It is going to be expanding as of this Friday. They're going to do a ceremony. It's going to be, as of Friday, it will cover 55 kilometers. It connects the south shore of Montreal into downtown today, and starting Monday for riders, it will connect the north shore as well, and it will go out to the airport in the coming future. It's going to be transformative for the way people travel around the greater Montreal area. And it has 4-minute headways. 4-minute headways, because you can run as many trains as you want as many times a day, because no one gets tired or needs to be paid overtime or, all of that. There's a lot of stuff with labor that people have to grapple with, and we're huge fans of labor. Our factories are unionized. We work really well with labor on operations and maintenance sides. But there's also a real demand to be able to provide transit service more efficiently and to provide passengers the kinds of services they need. So if it's about shifting people from driving the trains to being in the trains, to be able to provide more customer service and safety. I think it's something interesting, and the technology is there today and getting better and better to be able to deliver that. And then the last point, and there was talk from Metrolink earlier this week about this, is around predictive maintenance and to be able to have systems on the trains, which are basically at this point similar to cars, they're computers on wheels, and to be able to gather the data coming off of the trains to be able to do predictive maintenance, to be able to say, hey, for 3 days in a row, this train car has been slightly over temperature from where you programmed it. That probably means your HVAC system is going to need a repair before the HVAC system breaks down and you're getting calls from customers in the middle of July because it's hot as could be in their rail car and they're sweating trying to go to work and they look like a mess. So that technology is something that we provide today. It is something, again, that will get better and better, and we will be able to apply AI to that to be able to find patterns and to be able to provide insights to our customers, whether it's on operations and maintenance or whether it's how we design our trains and what suppliers we choose to work with, that I think offers a lot of potential for efficiency and cost savings in the future and just reliability of the travel experience.
That's great. And Darren, I imagine you're getting a lot of glimpse into some of the opportunities that Danny's talking about. I'd be curious, just from your vantage point, like what on the horizon for Metrolink from a transit technology perspective is most exciting, most urgent? Where are you focused right now?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is that railroad technology in many ways is still stuck in the 19th century. So any steps we make now is, literally a century worth of growth. But some of the technologies that we've seen happen, and Danny mentioned a few of them, the predictive maintenance, it's way better for us to better understand the nature of when our HVAC system is going to go on a passenger car somewhere out in the Inland Empire where it's 98 degrees, then my operations team getting a phone call from the CEO who happens to be on that train car that says, what are you doing to our customers? Our customers care about safety and reliability. Comfort is right up near the top as well. So the items that Danny talks about, that's what our customers care about. It's really, we're human beings with pretty basic needs. A little bit of air conditioning, a safe trip, I'm gonna make sure I'm on time. And we're struggling with a couple of those things, and we're gonna get through that. But we also have done utilizing technology that was all put together, all designed for the purposes of safety, a GPS-based system called Positive Train Control that all the large railroads in the country have to operate under, whether you're a passenger service or you're a freight service. We're using that technology for other purposes. We're able to use it for our customers to understand, where is my train? I mentioned, I get up in the morning, Camarillo, I have a 6:08 train. I'm able to look at my train tracker, and I know how long it takes me to get to the train station. It's like, okay, it's leaving Oxnard right now, I better go. So using technology that was there, we're getting value added out of technology that we were mandated to do out of safety. We've implemented this for communities where we are now using that same technology to be able to tell crossing gates whether a passenger train is coming and if it's going to stop at a station so that the next gate beyond it doesn't go down, so it's not impacting circulation of local traffic. We have connected our Positive Train Control system to the United States Geological Service Shake Alert. We occasionally have an earthquake in Southern California, and in the interest of safety, we've been able to tie our PTC system to that so that it sends, depending on the size of the earthquake, a simple message to an engineer that says, hey, earthquake, watch your speed, slow down, be careful, go at restricted speed, 20 miles an hour. Or we'll flat out, if it's a big one, it'll shut down the locomotive within a so many mile radius of where that epicenter is of the earthquake. So we're using technology in that way to ensure there's customer experience in that, there's safety and reliability in that, and I think some of the other things, we're looking at as we address. This is not technology that is new or special, but on one of our lines, we're going to be launching open loop, where you simply tap your credit card. Not something you normally see in commuter rail systems, so we're kind of out in front in that regard. But that's going to be another test for us, and if it plays well, it's going on our busiest line, the San Bernardino line, where we generally have about twice as many trains as we have on any other line in our region. If it works, we're looking towards a potential full implementation, hopefully before the summer of 2028, because that is when certainly the world is prepared to do that. We just got to be prepared for the world to do that.
So glad you hit on that with your project team sitting in the back. So,
I was going to say.
10 points for Darren.
That's exactly right.
And
Yes.
all around this room. There's so many, and on this stage.
I was going to say, and your funder is sitting next to you.
So Sarah,
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. But building off that, I mean, we're really excited about this open loop pilot project that we're doing with Metrolink. And it is one of many pilot projects that we are funding right now to really look at how you enhance the transit experience in very different places across Southern California. So we have several pilots underway right now. We're doing an e-bike library that will help folks who live in a housing development do their short trips around their homes, but also look at better connections to transit. We're funding a mobility wallet project in partnership with Metro. That's been very popular, and I know there's a lot more demand for resources to support that effort. Out in Riverside County, we've been funding their microtransit effort, and that microtransit work has really helped increase ridership on their main routes. So it's been exciting for us to be able to have some resources where we can really work with locals and their transit agencies to think about what are those gaps, what are those things that are preventing people from coming back to transit, and help them design a program or a project that gives them an opportunity to get back to where they were.
Well, and I think you touched on an interesting point about the customer experience. And if you look at why public transit use has gone down, customer experience is everything with that. And you don't want to have a terrible experience. And when you said, it's in the 1900s, I resonate with that because we have a lot of technologies that can enhance the customer experience, but these pieces for some reason haven't been fully put together. If you look at Uber, right? Uber's taken a lot of market share, but that fundamentally does not solve the problem of traffic congestion and efficiently moving people. But then you look at Uber Pool, right? Where they're able to do demand prediction by understanding where their riders are and actually have a dynamic routing system. I think the future of public transportation could very well look something similar to that, where you actually get more data to understand where your riders are to where you can eventually break certain fixed route molds and have more dynamic routing that can enhance that customer experience. But even simple things, like a lot of systems, you don't even know when the bus, you know when the bus is going to arrive, but with Uber, it could be 10 minutes and you'll just sit there and wait. But with public transit, you for some reason have anxiety waiting for your bus. So implementing these types of technologies is really what's going to make a more efficient operation. And within cities, moving people in buses is the most efficient way. It is. And doing it in electric buses is the most environmentally friendly way. So how do you implement these technologies to enhance the customer experience to increase ridership? And at the same time, it should decrease cost, right? Because if you have more dynamic routing, you can maximize your capacity utilization and you can lower that operating cost. But there's still a dislodgement here with transit agencies, not being united in a lot of senses, OEMs, dealers, there's multiple people involved in the value chain of building a bus. So you have to really control that whole process, but then work with the regulators to find ways to implement these technologies.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what you're talking about kind of brings this, we got the public, we got the private, and some of the challenges and how we start to speak the same language and build those kind of outcomes-based, like what is it that we're all trying to mutually achieve? And so I think that is so much of what a lot of our learnings are going to build together and how we start to incrementally put these technologies on the ground and make those improvements. So I think it's interesting, Sarah, when you were talking, it's, we come back to the region, right? How vast this and but diverse Southern California is. And you look at SCAG serves, literally the Mexico border all the way into the densest part of, LA and city of LA. When you think about trying to design a cohesive vision for this region, how do you look at transportation technology investments that can support the very wide range of customers and cities that you serve?
Well, again, I think we are very much listening to the communities and what they need to support the service that they need in their location. So that's what we've tried to do with the pilot projects that we have out there right now. I think one of the things that we found, and then always the next question is, okay, well then, how do you scale up? How do you make this scalable? I was, at one of the panels yesterday, and I feel like this is something very common that you hear, that, government, we're built for stability, right? We are not built for innovation. And when we are doing work, we are very much on the crawl, walk, run, path here. And so, I think there is a little bit of a patience in, figuring out, once you have a pilot that is successful, it will take some time to get, in our case in particular, what we've seen is that the funding landscape isn't really ready for this, right? Like, we deal a lot with federal dollars, and the federal funds have, all the processes and procedures are in place so that we can engineer and build the freeway. And so all the forms you fill out, everything that you do, the contracting, et cetera, is built with that outcome in mind. And so it will take a while, because we now need to change our processes and systems to support a different outcome. So I guess the bright side of that is that we're hoping with the games coming that all those key partners, the federal, state, locals that need to work together, will be able to focus our attention to get some things done maybe a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if everyone else is a fan of abundance, or, I'm rereading Recoding America. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'm literally obsessed with this topic now of like unlocking government inefficiencies and like what does legitimately good government efficiency look like. And I think so much of that is being able to converse across the public and private sector. And so I'd love it, Danny too, as someone who's worked on both sides of the table, and also like the big word P, procurement. I mean, one of the things that I literally can't stop thinking about, because I sit in the trenches with the agencies and delivering some of these projects, and it takes a year to figure out how to program federal dollars, to use on a technology project. What do we do about procurement from your vantage point? And how is like the whole landscape and the uncertainty how are you navigating that in the vein of trying to make solid business investments for a private sector industry?
How long do we have left? There's a lot of different ways that I can take that question. The uncertainty as a whole, like, please find me at a happy hour and we can talk about that. And there's a lot there, that some of it is procurement and some of it is all the other things. I think the procurement piece is interesting to me, having sat on both sides and just like wanting to get stuff done, which I think all of us want to get stuff done. I think there's two things that I see from this side, and really like one of the reasons that I went to Alstom after being in the federal government is we talked a lot about creating good paying manufacturing jobs with the choice of a union, which I can still rattle off with like no problem. And Alstom was creating good paying manufacturing jobs with the choice of a union. And I was interested to see, what does that look like from the private sector side? Like where does the policy rubber hit the road in that way? And what you see is that when we go through these procurements, there's two things. One is the kind of desire of the public sector to shift as much risk as possible to the private sector, which is understandable, but that also drives a certain amount of cost because the private sector prices that risk in. And there needs to be maybe better alignment and better ways to communicate during the development of procurements or before the development of a procurement, so that agencies can understand those trade-offs better and we can have more of an open conversation about those trade-offs and come to a place where agencies still have the control that they need and the accountability, because it is taxpayer dollars on the line, but that they're doing so in a way that they get the value that they need out of the project and it's delivered in a timely fashion. And the second thing in terms of delivering in a timely fashion in our industry, and I don't know, John, if you're seeing this also, is just I'm surprised for something that has been around for 200 years now, which is passenger rail, how much each agency still wants theirs to be like very special and unique, and how little there is of just like, cool, like we'll take that model of it. Everyone wants to do their own thing. And that drives up the time to delivery, because every time the project is a startup, it drives up R&D costs. And it means that like each time you're doing it, there could be mistakes. And there's going to be things that need to be adjusted once the trains go into service. And the more that agencies can work together on shared procurements or piggybacking, and we're seeing some of that. We're building new commuter rail cars for SEPTA, the commuter rail agency for the greater Chicago area, and VRE and rail agency in South Florida have piggybacking options on that contract, and that is awesome to see. But there's little of that going on, and many more customers who are like, yeah, that's cool, that's great that you're building like the trains for our neighbors, and the trains run across the borders, and it's the same tracks and whatever, but we're going to need to do ours just like a little bit different. And I think seeing more collaboration could help deliver projects more efficiently.
It's crazy. So like in Europe, for example, there's more standardization with buses, right? That makes it easier for us to produce them. But in the United States, you have every state that thinks that their bus, the way they build it, is the best. And it's all different across the country. From the Southeast, it's certain AC requirements to leaking requirements in the Northwest. Regulation around CDL drivers and how many seats they want, driver shortages. It's a really complicated problem. And like the world I live in is driven by CARB mandates from the electric side. And they still have these mandates in place. 13 other states also have these mandates. 50% of our addressable market are in these states that have these CARB mandates. There's something like 13% of new transportation equipment, 14,000 pounds or higher, have to be electric in 2026, going to 50% in 2030. And then where's the money coming from at the same time? When you look at the increased CapEx and you look at the Federal Transit Administration historically funding state transportation equipment at the municipal level, FAA supports the airports and port authorities, but there's not enough money to do what we want to do with these mandates. There's just not, right? It's like tens of thousands of buses that need to be built in my sector by 2030, and the CapEx cost is higher. And so there's innovative solutions through leasing that you can do to try to capture that total cost of ownership up front, but getting more clarity from the state government, particularly California, on how we're going to fund it, making their programs easy to work with. Because right now, CARB and HFIP, where you're supposed to get a $60,000 voucher off the price of a bus. Transit agencies use this, so does the private sector. But they've made it so difficult to tap into this money where they're either hyper-focused on fraud prevention or there's something weird going on, that they make it impossible. And then the OEM has to float this voucher. But they change their regulations whenever they want. And so there's no certainty. And at certain points in like COVID, you had factoring companies that were looking at products to try to help bridge that gap for OEMs, right? And this is not small dollars, right? I mean, you're talking about, 100 buses, it's $6 million that a company has to float. Well, these factoring agencies, because of how unreliable this program is, they will not factor it because they don't have a securitization of it, and you don't know when you're going to get it, right? And so then the OEM has to float more than their profit in a voucher, right? And so that makes it really hard for the OEMs to be able to scale. And I just wish that they would look at the mission, right? The mission of this of CARB, HFIP, of these states that are funding transportation equipment are to reduce carbon emissions for California taxpayers. And then that transcends all the different states that have piggybacked off of it. The acid test should be if this project accomplishes that, they should fund the project, right? And if not, they don't. Obviously, you want to avoid fraud and all that, but it's gone over the top. And these programs were a lot looser 10 years ago. And I think there was funny business going on that made them overcorrect. But without solving some of these key problems of how you're going to get to CapEx price parity through a subsidy mechanism, you're not going to achieve these targets.
I would say we have some similar concerns on the clean transit rule and just the ability of transit agencies to get there without sacrificing service. Because as you're saying, there isn't new funding. So, the concern is that in order to meet your clean transit goal, you're actually reducing your service levels. And that is not the outcome that anybody wants. One of the things that we're doing is a study across the region. We have 100 transit agencies just in Southern California to better understand where all the transit agencies are in achieving these targets and what are those barriers they're facing and where can we have some economies of scale and some synergies. And so sounds like we need to invite you, John, to be part of our focus groups as we're looking at where the challenges are and how we can work to address those. Because everyone agrees with the goals, right? We all, want to have cleaner air, et cetera. But making sure that the timelines are achievable and that we're set up for success, I think is also really important. Especially because we, as government and folks who are in this area, we want to do a good job. There's, I think, an increasing lack of just respect for government and what we can accomplish, kind of building off that abundance thing too, right? Like people, we need to do better and people want us to do better.
I mean, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? Like we have an opportunity here to start thinking incrementally about how we start to unlock those process improvements, how we start to deliver value faster, whether it's to the private sector who needs to get the stuff or the service out, or whether it's to the community, right? Who's like, we need these incremental benefits on the street, right? And I think that's something that, working with Metrolink and SCAG as an example on the open loop demonstration is a really exciting example of this, because they've decided to only launch on 2 lines to start and to not have all the bells and whistles right away. But it really allows you to think about, through modularity, through standardization, through buying something off the shelf. They're using just standard equipment, hardware, and software off of a state contract. They're not customizing. There's no way you can change what that is. But it's also radically transparent in terms of how much it's going to cost. You'll know the same day what that's going to be, that you can really start to put things on the street faster and you can start to give benefits to the customer sooner. So I think so much of this around funding and process and procurement is important. And then it's also the organizations themselves, right? Like to your point on government and change, right? And reflecting that cultural internally. And so Darren, I know you've talked about this from the beginning on Metrolink Reimagined and going through some hard changes. Like, how do you lead through these times of massive transformation of your organization, trying to get people on board to do things differently?
When you deal with any sort of transit customer, certainly on the rail system, there is nothing more personal to a commuter than their train schedule. So when you mess with that a little bit, boy, do we ever hear about it. But that's in the moment, and we've got to be looking beyond the moment. And so with our Metrolink Reimagined program, we're really talking about patience, which is, again, not something that particularly governing boards and policymakers have a whole lot of. We are immediate gratification driven. And so as we have worked through this first year of the new schedule, and we've seen small steps of progress, it's not enough for some. And so we keep talking about give this time. And we had some headwinds that didn't go, that affected us out of the gate as well. Didn't see those coming, so be it. But we do need to be patient and then remind people why we have to be patient, because what we're doing is not about the moment. It is about what we're looking at towards the future. First to the Olympics, and then beyond it. I've said all the stuff, my conversations with my team and just in general is, we're going to build some new infrastructure. We're going to make sure, to the degree we can, every piece of our equipment is ready to go for the Olympics. We're going to do some cool things, but the best legacy will be not anything we built or anything that we overhauled or anything that we purchased, but it was the fact that we changed people's minds in Southern California that you can use transit for something beyond a work trip. And real quick sidebar, did anybody go to the Olympics in Paris 2024? Okay, a couple people. So after the Olympics, I had a chance to go to Paris and did a post-mortem with the RER. It's the regional system for the Paris region, which was a very sobering moment that made me realize what we have to do at Metrolink. The RER on a daily basis runs 1,100 trains a day in the Paris region. We have just put the greatest amount of service in Southern California ever seen. We run 170 trains a day. They were able to take their trains, thanks to federal funding, up to 1,400 trains a day in Paris. And they hit it out of the ballpark. They did an amazing job. And my take home was, well, we're not going to be Paris, but we can be what we can be, and so we have this mission about trying to shorten procurement times and do what we can to make sure that we're ready to go when the games do get here, and just do the best we can, because that's probably all we can ask for. But if we do that well, the legacy is the fact we will show all of Southern California, and to a degree the globe, well, you can do some things in Southern California that we didn't know you could when it came to taking transit systems, not just to the games, but all over Southern California when they're here for tourism and so on.
I mean, you teed up my last question perfectly, which is I want to give everyone a chance for questions. I mean, we have this immovable date, right? I've been involved in planning the game since the bid, and I can't believe that's actually been like 10 years now. But we only have 3 years left, and so when we think about where each of your organizations is, right? Darren, feel free to chime in or add more to this, but I'll start with Sarah. When you think of where SCAG is or your contributions to the Southern California region, what the legacy is going to be, what are each of you hoping that you can say that my organization did to help change the way that Southern California looks and feels?
I mentioned our last objective is to really showcase our communities. And I hope that's what we do really well with the transportation system for the games. And that's what Paris did phenomenally, right? And they have different assets than we do, but we also have some assets. So that really would be my goal. Obviously getting people to the games, that destination is important, but really there's so much we can do on the journey as people are, if they're taking transit. Again, when in Paris, on the transit, you're experiencing people from across the world on transit together, the families, and there's something magical about it. When you're biking down a street, going through, past major monuments, I got great joy out of being in community with other people at this time when the world is coming together. And so I hope that in this region we can create that sense of community, because I think it's something that, we need here in the Southern California region coming out of COVID, but I think it's really something that everybody needs is really reintroducing to ourselves to the joy of being together. And I hope that's what we can do.
I've said most of what I would say to answer that question. I would only add that we need to have really good partnerships with our sister agencies in the public transit space, but also a renewed sense of partnership with the Class 1 freight railroads. 1/3 of our territory, we operate on BNSF or Union Pacific, and we're limited on the number of trains we can run. So the stretch is we expect to be the busiest, Los Angeles to Irvine. We're limited through that stretch of only 50 trains a day. To run what we think we need to be able to run 87 trains a day. So I've teed this conversation up with BNSF, and they've said, well, where are trains going to go? So it's a real question about that partnership, but one of the things that will show the progress we've made is how many were around in Los Angeles in 1984 for the 84 games? All right, there's a handful of us. I drove my 1976 Chevy Vega up to the front door of the Anaheim Convention Center to watch wrestling on 2 different days. I was a high school wrestler, wrestled a year in college. And we had no rail. The region in 1984 had no rail system, no passenger transit system whatsoever. Look where we are today, thanks in part to Metrolink, thanks to what LA Metro has done. So we're getting this great opportunity to show how we can shine from where we were in 1984 when our TDM strategy was stay home, and how different we're going to be. We're still going to have some stay home bit because we've learned how to do that, for one, in the last few years.
Or go to your community hub.
Hub, yes. So those are the kinds of things I see as that opportunity that is, we have that chance for a few years now.
All right, Danny John, one line because I want to open up to questions.
Okay, I love that, and I love the kind of look back. And when you look back and you're like, oh wow, we've come a long way, that is amazing. I think for us, we are very excited about getting our pieces finished for the AirTrain and having the AirTrain open and really helping introduce people from the jump to how great it can be to hop on rail when they're coming to LA. The connection to the metro station at the airport is amazing. And then to be able to provide the most delightful passenger experience for people using the Metrolink system that we possibly can.
Yeah, I'm excited about the games and pushing forward electrification. I'm obviously a big believer in it. I think that if we can work with the public sector and remove some of these barriers to achieve these goals, we can actually hit them, right? Right now there's some challenges, but I think if we can solicit the private sector feedback, we can curtail these programs to actually hit our goals. It's like right now, for example, the voucher programs, most of these operators are going to be the ones doing the buses. If you have more than 50 buses in your fleet, you're not eligible for the vouchers. So that means that all the buses that we're supposed to deliver for the games are not eligible under the program, right? So if we can work together, we can absolutely solve this. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay, so no more talking. We're going to take action items back. We're going to solve these problems. But in the meantime, questions from the audience. Really? Okay. All right, Carter.
Thanks for the great discussion. Carter Rubin from NRDC. I'm a big Metrolink believer. It was the first transit I rode in LA when I was in college in Claremont. And I would say, it seems like LA does an Olympics like every 40 years. So like, what if we project to the fourth time we do the Olympics? What do you think Metrolink is going to be like in 2070? Like what can I tell my son to look forward to when he's a grown up?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's, we're starting something. We started something in the early 90s. First of all, thank you for the kind words about Metrolink. I think we are moving towards this course, and I think the Olympics in 2028 are going to be what set us about how we are changing the culture of the region. I think the second phase of that is it's going to be a question of funding. We'll not talk with it. I'm not going to cry in my beer at this point. Give me a couple hours, happy hour. You were mentioning, you were mentioning. That's a real struggle here. But I think we have great opportunity if we're going to have infrastructure in place. We have a capital program that allows us to run half-hour frequencies all over our system. I think we want to get to our zero emissions goal, whether it's going to be hydrogen or battery or battery electric. I don't know what that is, but since I have a 40-year runway, we got time. It's just going to be a question of resources. But in the meantime, we're doing what we can. But I think that there's a lot of promise in what you'll be able to tell your kids about what it was when you were doing it.
Anybody else? In the back.
Thank you, Sarah. Actually, not a question, but a comment. And thank you for the interesting panel, Tony Louis, LA Metro. So I think Metrolink, to help your story, in 1990, there was a great purchase of right-of-way of over 400 miles in Los Angeles County at 1990, which enabled Metrolink to implement 500 miles of commuter rail service within 7 years. So I think that would help your story a lot.
Yeah, we just need another bond measure on the two bond measures from 1990 and 92 to help fund it. But you're right, you're spot on. I mean, that's going to be what it takes.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
You have the 500 miles today.
Okay, we do.
You go, sir.
Hi, how are you? Thank you all for being here. My name is Demetrius Thompson. I have a question. Have you guys thought about doing campaigns with radio stations? Think about it. Those guys have the ears of the young youth, okay? And I'm not young, but if I need to get to work, and I say I live in Ventura area, but I need to get to downtown LA, it's gonna be like a 43-minute drive for me. But imagine if I'm listening to the radio as I'm shaving in the morning and I hear, hey, we got this cool thing going on with Metro. If you're in the Ventura or Van Nuys area, you go to the bus, it's gonna get you downtown in 15 minutes. I'm gonna be like, man, I'm gonna try that. So I try it once, I like it. I'm gonna tell my friends, I'm gonna grab me a coffee and I'm gonna start taking the Metro. And you guys can also, this is another idea, then I'm gonna hand the mic back. You can call the radio station, ask for programming, give that guy a free token so he can use it himself. And then he's going to start telling people, and it's going to open the door. You're going to get more people on the bus.
I think public transit agencies are looking at all options, whether it's social media, traditional media. Those are the types of things that are out there that are opportunities. We did a college student ride free program for a year and a half, where students were able to ride our fleet for our system at no charge. I have had more college kids come up to me and say it was life-changing to do that. So it is putting programs out there. It's scary, crazy how this next generation communicate. Well, it's not crazy. It's totally real. They communicate all the time. That is all they're doing. So our job is just to get the door, get a small crack in that door, and kids are telling each other, "Hey, you can take the train." And I hear it and see it all the time. Whether it's, again, social, traditional, just word of mouth. But yeah, no. And one of the things we used to talk about is, you know, have the person who's doing the traffic on 1070 say brought to you by your regional rail system, because maybe that'll, you know, subliminal messages or something along those lines.
Got to make it cool.
Got to make it cool.
We will be doing a big communications campaign as part of the games and for Games Mobility, and really looking forward to the opportunity to partner with the private sector on that. I mean, we are here in Hollywood, and we should have a lot of folks working with us to get the message out. So I think it's a great opportunity for us.